everyone, it's IRL. I'm here again with Farzan Akhtar.
Hey everybody, pleasure to be here again.
Is that how you say Akhtar? Am I saying that correctly?
Yeah, it's close enough. Yeah,
Oh, don't tell me close enough. You
it's
say.
close
Let's
enough. It's close
hear
enough.
your own intro.
Do you, I mean, if you're talking in terms of like the Western way of saying it, it's pretty much probably like one of the best. If you're talking about how we say it traditionally, it's a bit hard, so it's Farzan Akhtar.
I'm gonna need to practice, but I will try to. I'll get it. I
Farzan
gotta do.
Akhtar is fine.
So I want you to introduce yourself. Then I'm gonna say it again.
Cool.
Hi everyone, it's IRL,
And Farzan.
and we're gonna talk today about
Wayru?
decentralized internet.
Woo! So I guess I can kind of start with an example, right? So when, at least in Europe, when you go traveling, you don't always have like good mobile reception or service in other countries, which isn't your home country. And it can be hard to find, say, public Wi-Fi, or public Wi-Fi isn't secure or it's not available or it's expensive. Wayru would allow you to basically connect to their services. And the idea is that these services would be hosted by individuals in their own houses, in their shops, in their businesses that people can connect to and then pay a fee to use. So how that kind of works is Wayru basically sell these little like internet routers, like these little boxes which you can plug in your house, and these connect to your internet router, and then they also start to broadcast around themselves. So as you're walking around on your phone, you'll be able to see the Wayru network. You'll be able to connect to it, and you'll be able to use it. And the part where the blockchain kind of comes into it is the blockchain can be used as a way to actually track where people are, rather not necessarily track where they are, but where they connect to the services, how long they connect to the services for, to help identify, where is a lot of our traffic coming from, where are people, most concentrated. Um, yeah, and that's the main gist of it. Any questions so far?
I think I just want to check my understanding.
Yeah.
Okay. I have a router, which you
Yep.
say, which is a fun difference between where we live. But I
Yep.
have a and it connects my Wi-Fi.
Mhm.
And so this is I'm struggling because it's like a hotspot, right? Kind of
Yes.
like
Yeah. A hotspot.
from my phone to a tablet. A
Yeah.
second router,
Mhm.
essentially.
Yeah.
All right. So far, I've got my regular internet router, and then I've got the Wayru router.
Cool.
And then I can choose to share the internet that I'm already paying for with router one to anybody that's in my area.
Yeah, pretty much.
Now I know do they have a token and how does that work?
From my understanding, the token is how you actually like pay to use someone's internet. So if I'm using your hotspot, surely you're going to want something in return, and that hotspot is and the token is what I would use to pay you and say thanks for letting me use your internet. And I think there's probably going to be how I imagine it is be sort of like mobile data plans where you can like purchase like 10 gigs of like data, and you would pay using the Wayru token. So wherever you go, you'll automatically connect to any available hotspots, and you'll actually pay them for the data that you're using.
So I know that you had a chance to talk to the founder.
Yep. Charval, I believe it's how it's pronounced. It's he no no he's a cool guy. So yeah, I mean, I guess there's sort of two sides of the Wayroot project, right? So one side is better accessibility in our cities, in our towns, because even I live in London. Sometimes it can be hard to find Wi-Fi that you can use, and you have to rely on your hotspot or your data with your service plan. But it can be difficult for like travelers to find a reliable connection. So the first part of the project is to help the availability of this access. So just to help people get online. And some people can't afford internet in the UK, in some places. So it's potentially a way for them to get access to the internet without necessarily having a lot of upfront costs, because when you sign up for an ISP, they tie you in for a year, 2 years, and it can be quite pricey. But with this, you sort of only pay for what you use,
A pay as
and
you kind
yeah,
of.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So like a pay as you go system, right? Which is hopefully doesn't only give them connection in their house, but also when they're out and about.
I know they're focusing on Latin America. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah.
A lot.
So Latin America forms like the second part of their goal, which is connecting the unconnected. So a lot of towns and villages all over the world, whether that's Africa, Asia, or Latin America in this case, don't have access to the internet. And that sort of comes down to the fact that a lot of our internet is run by a few companies. And these companies don't build the infrastructure to service these towns because there's not enough people, they won't make their money back. And the internet is such a powerful tool for everyone. It's it can educate people, it can open up towns and cities for commerce and tourism. And towns will be able to post about their locality online. They may have like beautiful beaches, but if no one knows that town exists, when we do a search on Google for nicest beaches in the world, that town might not show up. So it facilitates a lot of value for the town and for the people who live there. So the second goal of Wayru is to also help to connect the unconnected. And how they do this is that they're actually gonna deploy their own infrastructure, which at some point connects to the legacy infrastructure in our large towns and cities. And they've got they've actually thought this out. They will be using like long range emitters and sensors, so to take this information across large distances. And then even within towns, they'll actually be deploying the little like routers that you can buy in these towns, in shops, in buildings, in houses, while working with the local government or community to help everyone get online. You with me?
I think so because I mean, part of what we talk about on blockchain and Web3 is banking the unbanked, right? And making a lot of financial tools accessible for people where there were barriers before for them to enter the market. Rental is one that we all love Lofty.
Yeah.
It doesn't work if you don't have the internet, right?
Yeah.
Like you can't send these super cheap transactions or global remittances if you don't have access to a signal.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So I've had the chance to listen to Sharville speak a few times in spaces of Wayru. And it's clear that he's passionate about it, which is he's a very real human being that's behind it. But they're testing in other markets, right? Where they test in like London, and I thought they were testing in larger cities.
Yes. Yeah, so they are planning to test in large cities. I don't think they've announced which cities they're going to be primarily expanding in. I think I want to say somewhere on the west coast of the US. They mentioned it may be Miami, or I may be confusing it, but this is something they're doing, which is called like the Wayru pool. And what the Wayru pool is that if you don't have the facilities to buy one of these routers and actually install them in your own home, you can actually pay for them to actually install it in a location where they think there is a need for it. So these pools will actually they'll actually buy or use these routers and deploy them in cities across the US to create this network. And the benefit the user gets is they get some of the kickback of the tokens earned without having to actually set up and manage the infrastructure themselves. So they're giving a way for people to get involved and support this change without even if the person is unable to set up the router in their own home for whatever reason, and they can still contribute to the overall objective of Wayru. In this day and age, having access to the internet is almost like a necessity. You can't get much done without the internet. Most of our working happens online, most of our communication happens online. So it's super important that people have a way to access the internet, at all times.
Like you were saying, opening commerce, right? The global trading,
Yeah.
tourism is huge for a lot of developing nations. And like you said, you might have the prettiest beach, But if you don't have the internet to upload the picture to get the tourists there, and then if once they're there, they can't degen out while they relax or contact their loved ones, or you that that's really kind of a win-win as far as bringing commerce into some of these towns.
Yeah, exactly. And the project has really big goals and huge ambitions, and it's a project which will it will slowly roll out over years. They'll start in Latin America, that will take a few years in itself, and then they'll move on to another region where they think needs a lot of help. And they're sort of doing the job that a lot of internet service providers don't want to do, right? In the US, I believe a lot of the like internet is through like Comcast and like AT&T, right? So those are like two big providers who service pretty much the whole of the UK. But then above them you have like another ISP. I'm not sure what it is in the US, which you don't actually interact with. You as an end user using the internet at your house to browse Twitter or watch YouTube. You don't interact with this ISP, but this internet service provider is the ISP for Comcast and AT&T.
Those cable companies, the traditionally cable companies that do the web, they basically are the second router, right?
Yeah.
They have a router that sends to our router, and it's not even really their internet. They're just like
renting it off. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So, what the same is in the UK, right? One of the big companies is called British Telecom, BT, and they are the ones who lay all the foundations, who lay all the infrastructure, the fiber optic, the, data centers, all of that. And then you have other companies which come along, you have Sky, you have TalkTalk, who actually just rent off of, BT and then service, specific cities or towns. So if there's no value proposition for these big companies, they're not really going to do it. So Wayru is sort of combining like a social good with also, something which is a necessity for us in, first world countries.
But it's kind of taking that model, right? Where like the cable company is getting it from a larger provider and then sharing it essentially with their customers. It's almost like taking the Web3 gig economy type and being able to make things more accessible for people. That's amazing.
Yeah. So, there's you can kind of think of it as they're kind of decentralizing a centralized system, which is, what a lot of what blockchain does. They've taken the internet and they're hopefully planning to, incrementally roll it out to, new places. And they're doing it in a way where it's sustainable, where they can actually, spread to smaller towns and villages that, these larger companies might not be able to or might not want to.
Right? How do you get internet like to where there isn't any?
Let's say we have a small isolated remote town. In there they will set up a bunch of these little routers, and those little routers will form like a network within themselves, but that network can't communicate with anything outside of the network because there's no link to it. So you can have a small internet, say, for that town, but how do you get that internet to connect to the rest of the world, right?
Okay.
So at this point, this is where they have like long range like transmitters.
Mm-hmm.
So you can use these long range transmitters to actually take the data that little network has and actually transfer it to another like transmitter. And so you can kind of send the data back from a remote town to a big city where the infrastructure already exists.
I love these real world integrations of blockchain and how it can be used. Like we said, you can't bank the unbanked if they don't have access to these cheap, fast transactions.
Yeah. All right.
Very much. I appreciate
Thank you.
it.
I appreciate you too. I'll speak to you soon.